What if I told you it's not her you want, not truly, not deeply, not soulfully? It's the way you feel when you're near her. It's the man you glimpse in her eyes, the version of you that seems braver, more awake, more alive, simply because she sees him. You mistake that longing for love, but love in its truest form doesn't chase illusion. It seeks recognition. You don't want her body, though you ache for it. You want what her presence does to your soul. You want to stand taller, speak clearer, feel deeper. You want to be the man she makes possible in you, because she is not just a woman, she is the mirror. The mirror of all you could be if you stopped hiding behind performance. The reflection of your nobility, your edge, your fire. Not as fantasy, but as forgotten memory. She doesn't hand you those qualities. She summons them, and that's why it hurts when she leaves. Not because you've lost her, but because you lose touch with that part of yourself. That part that breathed more fully. That part that dared more boldly. That part that stopped apologizing for wanting to feel. Alan Watts once said, "You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago." And that's the secret she offers you, an invitation to evolve. She doesn't demand it. She doesn't ask for it. She simply exists. And in her presence, you remember your own depth. You become more aware of your posture, of your tone, of your hunger. Not for her body, but for the part of you that only comes alive around beauty. It is not lust. It is recognition. Recognition of the man you could be if you stopped shrinking for comfort, stopped numbing for safety, stopped living from a place of apology. She doesn't want your obsession. She wants your becoming. And so do you. That's the ache. That's the confusion. You think you're chasing her, but you're chasing the you that emerges in her light. This is not about her perfection. She may be flawed. She may even disappear. But what she leaves behind is a crack in your armor, a glimpse of something deeper, a trail of something ancient, the invitation to descend into yourself. Because desire is never just about another. Desire is the soul's way of saying, wake up. The soul does not want more pleasure. It wants more presence. And in her presence, you become present. That's what you're starving for, not her attention, but your own awakening. The feminine, when embodied in her true form, does not seduce with shape. She seduces with energy. And in that energy, you find clarity, not about her, about you. You find the part of you that wants to write poetry again, the part that weeps at beauty, the part that knows how to listen, really listen, not to respond, not to fix, but to feel. And feeling, for the man who's been armored too long, is the greatest act of surrender. So you long for her. But deeper still, you long for the moment you dropped your guard in her presence. You long for the softening, the deep breath, the return, not to her, to you, because it was never just about love. It was about remembrance. And the man you became around her, he was not made for her. He was made for you. She only held up the mirror. You were always there. She arrives like a whisper you almost remember. Not loud, not demanding, but undeniable. You don't fall for her because she fills a checklist. You fall because something ancient stirs when she's near, something not even you can name. She reminds you of the wildness you've tried to tame, the ache you've tried to numb, the longing you've buried beneath performance and pride. And suddenly, without understanding why, you find yourself reaching, not for her hand, but for your own depth. Because what she does isn't magic, it's memory. She brings you back to the place where you first forgot yourself. She laughs, and something softens in you. She looks away, and you feel the pull of your own uncertainty. She speaks, and your silence no longer feels empty. It feels alive. This is the paradox. You think you want her, but what you really want is to stop being numb. You want to feel again, to breathe again, to matter, not to her, but to yourself. The feminine has always carried this alchemy, not just the power to attract, but the power to awaken. In mythology, she is the muse, the siren, the forest that swallows the man until he finds his soul. She is not the goal, she is the path. And you were never just seeking her. You were seeking the man you become when you no longer hold back. That's why she confuses you. 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 because she doesn't respond to your rehearsed lines, your polished image, your practiced strength. She wants the you beneath all that, the version of you that still believes in mystery, the part of you that doesn't need to impress, just to be. Alan Watts taught that the self is not something to find, but something to let happen. And that is what she does. She doesn't give you yourself. She gives you permission to let yourself emerge. Around her, you're not performing, you're remembering. And in that remembrance, you touch the edge of something sacred. But here's the truth most men resist. You don't need her to become that man. She was just the mirror, the spark, the catalyst. The real fire is yours. And once lit, it cannot be unlit, even if she leaves, even if the story ends. Because the journey she awakens doesn't depend on her staying. It depends on you continuing. Continuing to choose presence over protection, depth over distraction, truth over image. Because what you saw in her was never hers alone. It was a reflection of your courage, your hunger, your longing to live without numbing. You think you fell for her beauty, but you fell into your own awakening. She made you want to be more, not for her, but because you remembered you were always meant to be more. So don't chase her. Follow what she stirred. That electricity, that trembling, that ache. It's not proof that she's the one. It's proof that you're alive. You no longer need her to feel that. You only need to stop running from it, because the man you became around her was not a character in her story. He was the truth that lives beneath your silence, the one who is still here waiting to be lived. Some men spend their whole lives chasing the woman who made them feel alive, never realizing it wasn't her they were chasing. It was the awakening. Because she doesn't live in your memory, she lives in your mirror, the way your breath deepened, the way your voice slowed, the way you stopped shrinking and started listening. That didn't come from her. It came from you. She simply cracked you open. And now you're trying to get back to that feeling. But feelings are not places. They are portals. And if you try to hold on to her image instead of the essence she stirred in you, you'll stay addicted to the ghost instead of becoming the man who was born in that moment. She was a reminder, not a solution, not a destination, just a sacred flash of truth that said, you are capable of deeper presence than you've allowed. And that presence, it was never about her. It was about your longing, the ache beneath the armor, the quiet voice inside you that's been whispering, there is more to you than this. You don't miss her. You miss you, the man you touched for a moment, and then abandoned when she was no longer there to reflect him. But he's not gone. He's waiting. He's waiting for you to stop needing a woman to bring him out. He's waiting for you to choose him, even when no one else sees, even when there is no audience, even when love is no longer the reward for your depth. Carl Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that is what she was, a messenger from the unconscious, an embodiment of your anima, the feminine within you, calling you home. You didn't fall in love with her. You fell in love with your own soul, knocking louder than usual. And now the question is, will you keep chasing mirrors, or will you meet yourself in the stillness? You don't need another goddess to remind you of your power. You need to become the man who no longer forgets it. And this is the path. Walk back through the doorway she opened, but this time, do it alone. Walk into the parts of yourself that once felt too soft, too tender, too poetic to be safe. Let your longing deepen instead of harden. Let your voice tremble instead of tighten. Let your grief rise without shame, because that is the man she saw, not the protector, not the provider, not the performer, the presence. And if you can be that man without her, then she didn't awaken you in vain. You see, the feminine doesn't give you anything you don't already have. She just helps you remember what you've buried. And it's not her you need. It's the memory she gave you of who you were when you finally let yourself feel. So feel, even now, especially now. Let the ache stay. It's not a wound, it's a guide. Let the emptiness echo. It's not a void. It's space being made for your truth. And if you can sit there with your chest open, with no one watching, with no reward promised, then you've done what most men never do. You've kept the man she awakened alive. There is a certain kind of grief that has no name. It is not for a person, not for an event, but for the version of yourself you touched briefly and then let go. And that grief, that quiet mourning, is sacred because it tells you you've seen something real. It tells you you've met a part of yourself you can no longer unsee. And now the ache you carry isn't just about her absence. It's about your own, the absence of the man who once breathed more slowly, who once listened more closely, who once stood in awe instead of hiding behind certainty. You didn't lose her. You lost access to yourself, but only for a while. Because now you know the way back, not to her body, not to the memory, but to the state of being she pulled from the depths of your soul. The man who doesn't flinch in silence. The man who no longer needs to impress. The man who can sit in his own sadness without trying to fix it. That man is not waiting in the next relationship. He's waiting in the next breath. Can you feel him? Can you stop running long enough to let him take root? Alan Watts said, the meaning of life is just to be alive. Not to be seen, not to be chosen, not to be loved the right way, just to be. And that's what she brought you, a glimpse of your own aliveness. Not through stimulation, but through surrender. She didn't need you to be perfect. She needed you to be present. And when you were, you felt holy, not because of her praise, but because of your presence. That's the secret. You weren't intoxicated by her beauty. You were awakened by your own awareness in her presence. And that's why the addiction runs so deep. Because for a moment, you remembered the man who doesn't second guess his own softness, who doesn't numb his desire, who doesn't shrink to fit into a world afraid of his tenderness. That man is still here, but you must choose him now consciously, without the mirror, without the muse, without needing to be awakened by anyone but your own willingness to feel, because that's what she represented, your sacred responsibility to yourself. She was never the destination. She was the invitation. And now that you've answered, you don't need her to stay to keep going. You don't need her gaze to stay grounded. You don't need her chaos to stay awake. You don't need her silence to stay searching. You've touched the fire. Now carry it. Let it warm your voice. Let it soften your judgments. Let it melt the places where you've hardened against your own longing. You don't miss her. You miss the way you allowed yourself to be. And that permission you can give yourself now. You don't have to be seen to be sincere. You don't have to be held to be whole. You don't have to be chosen to become. Because who you are becoming is not dependent on the feminine returning. It is born from your ability to stay with yourself now that she is gone. You are the man she saw, not because she made you that way, but because you were willing for a moment to believe you could be. Believe it again. Not to win her back, but to never lose yourself again. This is the moment when most men turn back. They feel the hollow, they feel the pull, and instead of standing still, they search for another her, another face, another spark, another mirror to show them who they are, because they have not yet learned to see it without reflection. But your journey doesn't require another woman. It requires devotion to the man she revealed. You see, she wasn't your answer. She was your question. She stirred the mystery, but only you can walk it. You thought you wanted her love, but you needed your own. And now that you've tasted it, now that you've touched the part of you that listens, that feels, that knows, you can't go back. Don't go back. Don't return to the hollow man who waits to be noticed before he matters. Don't return to the man who only feels depth when love is promised as a reward. Alan Watts said, the ego is nothing other than the focus of conscious attention. And you, for a moment, took your attention off the world, off the chase, off the noise, and placed it inward. And what you found was terrifying, beautiful, real, and yours. The man who breathed deeper, the man who wept at silence, the man who burned without smoke, or spectacle. That man wasn't created by her. He was remembered through her. She was the echo. You are the source. Now live like it. Live as if no woman ever needs to awaken you again. Live as if the fire lit in you was not a visitor, but a birthright. Live as if your softness is not a weakness, but a language the world forgot how to speak. And when you do, you become the man women feel safe to unravel near. You become the man whose stillness speaks louder than his strength. You become the man whose presence heals more than his plans ever could, because you no longer need her to hold you. You've learned to hold yourself. And in that holding, you become whole. You stop reaching for mirrors. You start becoming the mirror. And maybe one day a woman will arrive, not to save you, not to awaken you, but simply to walk beside you, because she recognizes the man who already knows his way home. You will not need her to reflect your power. You will reflect hers, because now you see. You see that love is not possession. It is permission to feel, to become, to be. So let her go, not with resentment, not with longing, with reverence, because what once felt like loss now breathes like liberation.